Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Networking with NIFA. My name is John Turner, and I am the Manager of Community Development and Research at the Nebraska Investment Finance Authority. Joining me today, also from NIFA, is Kelly Schultz, and she is the LIHTC Compliance Manager. We're very happy that you are attending this special edition of webinar series that we started. This is our first one focused on kind of educating and helping property managers recognize resources and all kinds of great information. We actually have 4 special edition property manager focused webinars scheduled between now and the end of October. Today it's on eviction prevention, which is perfect timing for things that are going on across the country, and we want to make sure that people are aware of the resources that are available. In 2 weeks, we'll have one on tenant behavior, talking about tenants that struggle maybe with following a lease and have mental health issues and things like that. We have some experts that'll be presenting with that. And then in October, we have domestic violence and human trafficking are our topics. So again, we're very pleased that that folks have signed up for this. It's great to see so many people that registered, because these are important topics. And we want this to be valuable to you as property managers or anyone else who's watching, because the key is there's great resources in our communities that can help tenants so they can pay rent and stay housed in your apartments. There's a need now for rental units for people that need them, and we're trying to do our best to kind of help bridge that gap. So today we have some great guests. I'm very excited about this. Our first guest is Denise Packard with the UNL Center on Children, Families, and the Law. We also are joined by Ryan Bailey with Blue Valley Community Action. And we also have Tom Bliss and Ashley Larson from Southeast Nebraska Development District. So I think without further ado, oh wait, I always forget to mention this. If you have questions, we will be monitoring those. So go to our question feature and type those in, and we will be checking those out. We're going to save all the questions until the end of our panelist presentations. And then this is being recorded, and we'll put it on our website, and it'll be on our YouTube channel under NIFA Housing. All of our webinars are under that. Okay, well, let's get started, and let's bring Denise Packard up, and I will share your screen right now, Denise.
All right, great. Thanks for having us.
You bet.
All right, so I am the Coordinated Entry Manager at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln at the Center on Children, Families, and the Law. The coverage area that we oversee is the Lincoln Continuum of Care, so the city of Lincoln, and then we also have the balance of state, which is basically everywhere outside of Omaha and Sarpy County as well. So we have kind of a big area that we cover, and today, since we are fortunate to have Ryan here. She has a wealth of knowledge, and she's going to share some more balance of state specific stuff. I'm going to focus a little bit more on Lincoln, just because they've done some unique things with the funds that have come down to the city of Lincoln. And then I'm also going to touch on a little bit of what we're doing across the balance of state. So the first, if I can get my slide to go. There we go. The first thing is just so that you guys can understand, if some of you aren't familiar with what coordinated entry is, HUD has mandated that there should be a process developed so that all people experiencing homelessness and a housing crisis have fair and equal access and are quickly identified, assessed, and referred to housing and assistance based on their strengths and their needs. So what that means is that we have developed like a common assessment, and actually for Lincoln and balance of state, it is the same assessment and the same process across a majority of those many, many miles across our state that use the tools that we have developed as a governing body, so that we are sure that we are treating everyone fair and give everyone equal opportunities for all of the resources, whether it be for the homeless side of things, which many of you probably house folks that have some rental assistance from many of the agencies across the state, or if it is from for prevention, for trying to prevent them from hitting the homeless system. Lincoln, as I said, we have recently onboarded our prevention system, and what we have decided to do is create what's called a common fund. And this is a collaboration between all of the All Doors Lead Home agencies that are our front doors and our like our non-public doors, which I'll go through here in a minute. All of them, as well as the City of Lincoln, who is our lead with many of the funds, and then also the Lincoln Community Foundation has offered to be our fiscal agent. So they are the ones that hold the dollars and then help us disperse those. The other thing that we have done with this is we have created Lincoln Prevention Assistance, we call it LPAC positions. So we have a couple funded navigators, so to speak, within our community to help process this specifically for prevention, which has been a great asset. And they actually, one of them just started this week and the other one started a couple weeks ago, and it has already been a huge blessing for our area. The other thing that we have within our community is we have quite a bit of braided funding. We have some funding that is COVID specific, which I'm going to review because there's so much of it and it's very, very confusing. I just kind of want to give you a taste of how some people might fit into certain categories and not others, just to give you a little background. Not that you'd ever have to make those decisions, but just so you have that knowledge. We also have a common fund that we have just started and we are going to continue to grow. This is something that our community has dreamed of doing for quite some time. We've had churches approach us that they want to be wiser with their funds because sometimes they feel like people are jumping from church to church, or so to speak, and just wanting to give them the funds, but then they don't know if they've received assistance somewhere else or if it will be affected. So this would be a place that they could place that money. They could still have that one-on-one contact with them if they would like, but it is a place that that money can be housed. We also have emergency solution grant funds, Nebraska Homeless Assistance Partnership Program. There are those funds that are not COVID related. And then we have other types of funds that are able to be used for anyone that comes through the system. So if you are a property manager across Lincoln or Balance Estate, you might be questioning, how can I get someone? I had one landlord call me and she's like, I have $57,000 of people in arrears, and all of them, this particular rental area is where a lot of hospitality folks work. So that has been hit hard with the pandemic. So one thing that you can do to help those individuals is to get them connected with assistance. Identify, if you can see, man, they have a lot of rent that's past due and they have been talking to me about their struggles. You can help identify those individuals and link them to the public access points, which I will share. And I'm sure John can share this information because it's included in this PowerPoint afterwards. Otherwise, you can feel free to reach out to me. And then the other thing that we will take it from there, and we will use a common assessment tool to be sure that they are assessed and then connected with the appropriate program. We will refer them to the coordinated entry prevention system. We will connect them with the resources that they might be eligible for. And then our ultimate goal is to work with the property managers, landlords, and mortgage companies, because some of the funds can cover mortgages at this time, which is fantastic and has been very helpful. And our goal ultimately is to keep them housed and not have them hit the homeless system. So this is a sample of, as you can see on your screen, we have what are called public access points across our coverage area. What this is these are advertised agencies that have said, hey, you don't have to be a client of ours. We will help you out. We will get you assessed. We will get you referred and connected with the coordinated entry system that can then help determine what is the most appropriate pot of funding for you. What intervention is going to be the most appropriate for you. So as you can see in Lincoln, we do have several agencies: Community Action Partnership, Lancaster Saunders, Matt Talbot, Centerpoint, People City Mission, the People City Mission Help Center, the Hub and Cedars are both youth focused. And then our newest public door is Family Service. We have had two of the Lincoln Prevention Assistance Common Funds dedicated staff. They are housed at Family Service Lincoln, and then the other one is at Centerpoint. The Centerpoint person just started, so if you're in the Lincoln area, they might take a minute to get her trained. However, she was volunteering doing some of the assessments at one of the other agencies in the community, so she already has that background, but we need to give her a minute to get familiar with the software and how to maneuver the system. So we're very grateful that those positions are in place to help with the process. The other agencies that we have that are not advertised agencies would include Friendship Home, Catholic Social Services, or Res Care. So if you have a tenant that is already working closely with one of those agencies, you can feel free to suggest to them, hey, or just give them this flyer and say, hey, if you're familiar with any of these agencies, reach out. Otherwise, pick an agency, get connected. I can tell you Family Service and Centerpoint do have those dedicated staff, so that might be, if they're not connected with anyone, that might be your best bet. And then on the other side, you can see these are the balance of state public access points. As you can see on this first sheet, there are Blue Valley, which is Ryan's coverage area, is listed here. Several different offices across their coverage area. And then we have community action of Mid Nebraska. And then 2 more pages, which is excellent. So much coverage. We have Central Nebraska Community Action Partnership up in the Grand Island kind of area. And then we have Northeast Community Action Partnership, Northwest Community Action Partnership. And then we do have other agencies that are not community action agencies. We have CareCorps, which is now Lifehouse out in Fremont. They are a public access point. And then Cirrus House in Scotts Bluff area. And then we have the Connection Shelter in North Platte, as well as Hope Harbor. All of those have access to be able to do assessments and referrals. The balance of state is just now onboarding the prevention system, so they're not up and fully running. Many of the agencies already have prevention funds, so they're using that, but that common assessment tool is just now being built, and they will be receiving training on that prevention tool here in the near future. But there is still assistance, so don't be afraid to get connected with them anyway. So what does it take to qualify? For the prevention specific piece of it is that at risk of homelessness. They're not stably housed. It could be someone that is living in a hotel. It could be someone that can't pay next month's rent. It could be someone that has received an eviction notice and is needing assistance, and a rental intervention of the funds could save that person from being evicted. Or it could be someone that's doubled up. Maybe they are staying with a family member or a friend and their time is just up and they need to move on. Those are some of the few things to qualify. Some of the programs, and this is where we will take it from our side, but just for your knowledge, some of the programs do require an eviction notice, and that is for some of the non-COVID funds. And then what we could also use your help with as property managers is helping individuals to educate about documentation, because we do have quite a list of documentation that is required for us to gather. And I can tell you some of the landlords that I have been working with since we have gone live in July, they have been so grateful and so helpful with providing a list of the documents to the tenant, that then when the tenant shows up, if they need those documents to qualify, then they can make that process go a lot faster. So that 5-minute intervention of handing them a document and saying, hey, you might want to reach out to one of these agencies could mean dollars in the landlord's pocket, which is fantastic for everybody all around. The COVID related, and this is for Lincoln specifically, can pay forward rents. So like, it doesn't have to be that they have any arrears. It can be that they need help with October's rent. It could be that they need help with October's mortgage. And we can serve up to 100% area median income through December 31st of 2020. There is a lot of funds available for that specific program that can serve that 80 to 100% area median income. The other programs can serve the lower area median incomes, but this one has to be expended by December 31st, 2020. This is an example of the checklist of documentation that is going to be needed, specifically in Lincoln. Many of the programs across the state also need this documentation or something similar to it. That's where you could work with that public door that was on one of the other flyers if you're in Greater Nebraska, or if you're in the Omaha area. I know Match, coordinated entry, excuse me, manager could help you kind of wade through kind of what would be needed. So for the Lincoln area, we ask that everyone bring in identification. We have to prove, for one of the programs, we have to prove state residency and citizenship. A state identification would suffice for that, for both. We also need verification of, like if they have a job, we need their most 1 month worth of pay stubs, or if they're on Social Security or disability, we just need their most recent statement. as well as if there is a notice of any arrears, a 7-day notice, a notice to vacate, a court order document. It's good for us to have that documentation if it is apparent in that situation. The other thing that we do need is 1 month of bank statements. We want to be sure that we're using this money appropriately. So I can see why they require the bank statements. We don't want someone sitting on $100,000 and asking for $300 in their rent. They can cover that, you know. So we want to be sure that we're using these funds where it is definitely needed. And then we also have come up with a COVID declaration, and it states like kind of what their situation is. If they have lost employment, if they have been sick themselves and not been able to work or have had to isolate because of the pandemic, if they've been terminated or furloughed because of COVID, many of those questions are on that declaration, and they do have to submit that to us. Some people have also had supporting letters from document or hospitalization. Not necessary, but some of them just feel better giving that to us. They're not used to asking. I found with this population, they're not used to asking for help. So just trying to kind of ease that, make them feel kind of more normalized. It's okay to ask for help, especially during these trying times. This is another sample that we use all of our public access points use to kind of judge for eligibility. So as you can see on here, a family of 4, if they make $82,100 a year, and again, if they lost their income this month, that will drop them down. We will look at what is their income right now, not what was their income last year, what is your income at this moment, because we know that some people have just been laid off in the past 3 weeks or so. So we're looking at the now, not the past. So this kind of gives you an example of what kind of population we're looking at. It's not the 26,200 necessarily. We are more than happy to help with that population, but this has definitely opened up our assistance to those that are in the working field and making a little bit more money. Here are the examples of the declarations that we need. If someone has, again, here's the COVID declaration that I was just talking about a minute ago. And then also if there is someone that has completely lost their job and they have nothing at this point in time, we do ask them to state a declaration that they do not have that information. So just some examples for you to see what is being expected of the tenants if anyone receives this help. They have to do a little footwork for us. So again, like I said, I wanted to focus a little bit on Lincoln just to kind of give you a glimpse of what has been received. We have established our first few rounds of dollars. We have prevention assistance that, as you can see, we got quite a big chunk of change. We have put $180,000 into the emergency solutions grant. That can serve that lower income population, and it can kind of serve a longer period of time. CDBG is $795,000, and then we put the infrastructure and supports. So we have that broken out here, and then we do have some rapid rehousing, because it is not good for people to be in shelter right now. The congregate living is not a good place for them to be. Talk about spread. That could happen very, very easily in any of our shelters. So the shelters are actually trying to run at a lower capacity. So we did pull some money out so that we could support that and get them out of shelter and into housing, which is really critical for us to onboard more units that are affordable so that we can get people to safety and not continue feeding into the pandemic. So this is another breakout of all of the different funds. I can tell you a little bit, the ESG, the 2 funds are the Emergency Solutions Grant. That's for that lower level of funding, so that they can serve up to like the 50% area median income. The CDBG is the Community Development Block Grant, and that can serve up to 80% area median income. And we can provide rent and mortgage assistance with that, as well as for utilities. In Lincoln, there is $100,000 carved out for childcare providers, which has been a great asset for many of the providers that need some assistance, because the childcare system had been hit quite hard earlier when many of the agencies had to close down or run at lower numbers. This one, the Lincoln CARES Act Response and Recovery. This is the fund that has to be expended by December of 2020. We have a match from Nebraska Children to upfront cover portions because it's kind of on a reimbursement basis. So Nebraska Children has matched a part of that fund for us. And what we are using it, we have $728,000. We can use rent, mortgage, and utility assistance up to 100% area median income. It's a one-time assist. So it's a one and done. So sometimes we are able to approve like 2 or 3 months, maybe 4 if it's really, really needed at a time, just to be able to get some people back on their feet. This has been a huge response to this need. The recovery and response and recovery dollars, not every agency that has received it is using it in the same way. It was kind of a build it. So they all look very, very different from what I have seen. So this is just for the Lincoln area. So if you have folks in Lincoln, have them apply because we're trying to get that used up pretty quickly. So there you go. That's what, those are all of the COVID resources that we have. And we can pay future payments. It doesn't have to be someone that's being evicted. And of course, with the moratorium, that can this can kind of rest your mind a little bit. If someone's falling behind, they can still reach out for assistance. There's no need to even have to talk about evictions at this point in time. We can help with the financial side of it, for financial reasons, I should say. So I think that is all I have, and I look forward to any questions you might have at the end. John, there you go. My information is right here.
Okay, thank you, Brian. I'm going to send it over to you.
All right, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, and can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you. As I was introduced, my name is Ryan Bailey, and I'm with Blue Valley Community Action. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Community Action and the services that we offer. Just a little bit of background. Community Action, our goal is helping people, changing lives. And so all of our programs are built around that statement. Community Action, we are all private, nonprofit organizations. So there has been some misconceptions that we are a federal or state or even a county organization. While we do receive federal, state, and local funding, we are actually a private nonprofit organization. We were started, Community Action began back in 1964 when LBJ began his war on poverty. So we have been around for many, many years. Blue Valley Community Action began in 1966. There are over 1,100 community action agencies across the United States. What do we do? Well, community action agencies programs vary across geographical areas. We are in a particularly rural area, so our programs look a little different than what they would look like in Lincoln or Omaha or Chicago or a larger city. So it does depend on where they are located, but the goals and the missions and the purpose are all always the same. We have the common theme of improving lives and communities. So for Blue Valley Community Action, we have many programs, as you see here. We have Head Start, housing, lease-to-own housing, owner-occupied rehab, first-time homebuyer assistance, housing counseling, weatherization, WIC, commodities, juvenile services. We have intensive case management services. We offer RentWise classes. We have homeless programs for veterans, for youth, individuals, and families. We have homeless prevention programs, which is what we're talking about today, for all of those populations. We do have emergency shelter, emergency rent and utility assistance, food, volunteer opportunities, hygiene, clothing, household items. We are starting some health-related services, prescription assistance, and even telehealth services. With the CARES money that we have received, we are going to be able to start these services. So we do offer a wide variety of services that impact all stages of life and a variety of different lifetime circumstances. So you see here, our service area is Southeast Nebraska. We have 9 counties. Polk and Butler are our more northern counties. And then right on the Kansas border, we have Thayer, Jefferson, and Gage. While these are our core counties, we do have other programs that expand out into other areas, particularly in the southeast corner. And then our veterans program, we actually operate in Omaha. So we do have an expanse of services, but these are our core counties. So eviction prevention. These services are offered in all 9 of our core counties. They are also offered in Omaha and in other areas. Most community action agencies throughout the state are going to have these services as well. We offer emergency financial assistance for past due rent. So this requires a lease. It doesn't have to be a 12-month lease with some of the new COVID funding and the CARES funding that we've received. And with COVID-19 period, a lot of our funding sources have relaxed this restriction. So it may not have to be a 12-month lease, but there does need to be some sort of rental agreement in place where if we assist somebody, for example, with 6 months of their past due rent, you're not going to just immediately evict them. So we just have to make sure that that there is some sort of rental agreement in place. Many of the programs that we have now are requiring some sort of COVID impact verification. This isn't hard to do right now. Obviously, if you're homeless, that's immediately, it makes you vulnerable for the impact of COVID-19. And with the economy and jobs and things the way they are, it is not hard to link most emergency situations to COVID. For some of the programs, you must be in arrears or at imminent risk of losing your housing. So if, like I said, you're past due several months on your rent, or you are couch surfing or staying in the home of another person where, you may have to leave by Friday, or, if the landlord catches them letting other people live with them, they could be evicted. So the purpose is for people who are at very imminent risk of losing housing, and those who are already in housing but perhaps have an eviction notice or other notice saying that they have to be out. For subsidized housing, we can pay arrears. So using the previous example, if somebody was 6 months in arrears in a subsidized unit, a unit based on their income, we can help catch them up, get them to where they are, get them stable in their home so that eviction possibility goes away, but we cannot pay current or future rent. So we can, like I said, we can get them stable, but we can't continue with future rent. And that is only for those that are in subsidized or income-based housing. There are, as Denise talked about, there are income guidelines, and those sometimes vary depending on the program, but they have, like other things, been loosened, and it is relatively easy to qualify many households for the income guidelines. Some more about eviction prevention. The nice thing about working with the community action agencies is that unless it's a household that, otherwise it's just kind of a blip in the road, they've been doing fine and their transmission went out on their car, and they just need a little bit of help to get through this bump in life. Most households receive one-on-one case management, working one-on-one with a case manager to address the needs, work through some of the obstacles that got them to the point that they are at. And part of that is building relationship with the landlords. So not only do the case managers have and build a relationship with the landlords, they also work with the tenants to build that relationship with the landlords. What we see a lot is that the tenants get behind, they get an eviction notice, and they are afraid. They don't want to talk to the landlord. They don't want to, they're afraid of what's going to happen. And so they tend to cut off communication or not reply to letters or phone calls or knocks on the door. this is done out of fear, and when you don't have any money or way to pay your rent, the instinct for many people is to hide from that. And so the case managers step in and help bridge that gap, rebuild that relationship to where the tenant and the landlord have communication, and work with the tenant to talk about how important it is to remain in communication with the landlord. They meet with their case manager at least once a month, but it's usually more than that, at least at the beginning when they're enrolled. The main goal of of all of our eviction prevention programs is housing stability. Getting to the basics of that is being able to follow the lease. So that is the core of what people work with, what the case managers work with the tenants about. So it's literally going through the lease line by line, figuring out how to be good tenants, how to communicate, how to address the issues that led to the housing stability at the most basic level. And also, if they haven't been able to pay the rent, obviously paying the rent is part of the lease. So what do they need to do to work on that, to get to the point where they have enough income, or they're back to work, or budgeting, whatever that looks like. But essentially at the most basic broke down level, the case management is focused around the lease and what they need to do to maintain that lease. We do operate under the Housing First model. This is a shift from previous housing models where an individual would come in and say they didn't have a job, they had no income, they had no good rental history, or they had bad situations with previous landlords, they burnt some bridges. In the past, years ago, it used to be, well, we can't help you until you're ready to be housed, meaning you need to go out and get some income. You need to go out and get some counseling. You need to go make amends with your previous landlords. That is no longer the way that we address this. We operate under Housing First, which is essentially, we believe housing is a basic human right. And if you are able to be housed, you can better deal with the other issues that brought you to close to eviction or being homeless. If you are not worried about where your kids are going to sleep at the end of the week, you can better deal with going out and finding a job, or following through with other things. So there is no preconceived barriers. They do not have to be sober. They do not have to have an income coming in. They do not have to have a job. They can have a bad rental history. Those are the things that once they're housed, once they're stable in that aspect of their life, that we can work with them to address and change as they go forward. And so that is a big shift of where we used to be. People don't have to be ready, quote unquote, to be housed. We work with them once they're doing that. Success is determined by the enrollees. They determine their goals. I had mentioned that we work with them on the housing stability is based on the lease, and that is absolutely true. But the enrollees, the tenants, the people that we're providing these services to, need to have bought into this as well. It needs to be their goals stated as well, because if a case manager comes in and tells somebody, you need to do A, B, C, and D, perhaps that isn't going to work for that person. Perhaps that isn't where they want to go in their life. So yes, they do need to be able to follow the lease, but they also need to be engaged and part of making their goals, because this is their life. And ultimately, when we step out, they need to step in and they need to be moving forward. Program timelines, we have several programs like Denise talked about, and they all vary. Some folks may just need 1 month service. They just need this little help up over a little stumbling block they've had. It could be 12 months. Some programs it can be more, and this depends on their need. It depends on their level of, I don't want to say level of progress, but how things are moving along, and the funding available, because that does change. Assistance includes all or some of rent and utilities while obtaining housing stability. So the programs can pay for all of the rent and utilities. We may ask for the tenant to gradually start paying towards those things on their own to build into that. It just depends on the program and where they are. And as Denise said, there are some limits. We have to follow the fair market rent guidelines, and we have to make sure that we are following rent reasonableness, that the rent is reasonable compared to other units in the area. I just wanted to touch on the rapid rehousing programs. So these are the homeless programs. The point is exactly that, rapid rehousing. We want people to exit homelessness and obtain safe and affordable housing as quickly as possible. As Denise said, staying in the shelters, living in shelters, close contact living is not good at any time, but especially right now with COVID and the spread. And so we want to get people off of the streets, out of the shelters as quickly as possible. The lease is in the tenants' names. As with prevention, assistance with all or some of the deposit, rent, and utilities for as short of a time as possible to get them stable and back on their feet. Typically, a lot of people in the rapid rehousing programs don't need it for very long. They need less intensive case management. They have, not as many barriers. This can, like I said, this can be a month of services. This can be a year of services. It really depends on their situation. Again, regular minimum of monthly meetings with the case manager. They connect to all available mainstream and community resources. Again, very important to do the landlord communication between the case manager and the landlord, and also the landlord and the tenant. And of course, housing first. The other thing about rapid rehousing is we do inspect the property. We inspect the unit to make sure that it's livable, to make sure that there are the basic human needs: electricity, water, running water, toilets flush, no holes to the outside, broken windows, doors, things like that. So there is an inspection, a basic inspection, to make sure that it is habitable and working for the tenants who live there. Transitional housing. This is another homeless program. This is more intensive case management. These are households with many barriers and very few, if none, support systems. We put the lease in our agency's name. The tenant then has a contract with us, an occupancy agreement with us, but the lease is actually in our name, and we pay the deposit, rent, and utilities. And again, connection to all the community resources. Longer enrollments for this. It's typically up to 1 year. Obviously, as everything, the end goal is housing stability and to move the lease into the tenant's name after they have built that relationship with the landlord and done what they need to do to be able to abide by a lease. Our current funding, Denise talked about some of these things, but specific to Blue Valley Community Action, we have HUD, Housing and Urban Development Continuum of Care, Project First. This is a homeless program for families. We have the Youth Homelessness Demonstration Program, which is also through HUD, Project Fires, and this is for homeless youth or youth who are at imminent risk. We have our Veterans Program, SSVF. That funding is through the VA, and that covers homeless prevention and rapid rehousing. And then we have the CARES funding. We have the Nebraska Homeless Assistance Program and Emergency Solution Grant, or ESG, through HHS, through our Community Action Core funding, the CSBG Community Service Block Grant. We have funding for rent, utilities, and mortgage assistance. And then we have a Response and Recovery Grant through HHS that helps with medical needs. Things like co-pays, office visits, prescriptions, medical implements such as a wheelchair or an inhaler or crutches or things like that that people need. This includes mental health services as well, assistance with the co-pays and connecting to that. We have, like I said, we have our 9 counties, but our administrative office is the hub, the main contact, and we are based out of Fairbury, Nebraska. This is my contact information. And then I wanted to show the map of the state where the community action agencies are located. And it may be a little difficult to read, but there is a community action agency in every single county in Nebraska. And so if you are, for example, in North Platte, you would contact Mid-Nebraska Community Action or Community Action Partnership of Mid-Nebraska for assistance. And as I said earlier, all community action agencies do things a little different, but we all have these core bases of programs and things available. And so wherever you are in the state, there is an agency, a community action agency that can serve you and provide information and a good resource and referral for your tenants. And that is all I had. Thank you. And if there's questions at the end, I will be glad to answer them.
Great. Thank you very much, Ryan. Okay, Ashley and Tom, I'm going to send it over to you. And I just wanted to mention 2 things. One, so I used to do rental assistance for about 12 years for Region 5 systems. One of the things I never heard or had resources to was mortgage assistance. So this is new for the CARES Act funding to help actual homeowners. And the second is what you're going to hear about now, and that's an actual landlord assistance program. So take it away, Tom and Ashley. And yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, John. My name is Tom Bliss. I'm the Executive Director for Southeast Nebraska Development District, or SEND, and this is Ashley Larson. Ashley is a housing program specialist with the organization as well. So today we're going to talk about a landlord assistance program that was funded by some CARES dollars. So briefly, SNAC is actually the Southeast Nebraska Affordable Housing Council. It was created in 1993 as a nonprofit. Originally, we had 8 counties that were basically ran along the Missouri River, and over time, that's expanded to include the area that you see now. So there are 16 counties in this service area. The activities that we really focus on are down payment assistance, purchase, rehab, resale, or PRRs, owner-occupied rehabs, or owner-occupied rehabs is what we call that, and then new construction. And in particular, the new construction really focused on the Crown projects that occurred or continue to occur. The ones that we have ownership in were started in about 15, 20 years ago. So they are getting ready to mature, and we will decide on how to move forward with those. We also work with the Southeast Nebraska Development District, or SEND, and SEND Inc. SEND is one of 8 development districts in the state of Nebraska. We are established by state statute. You can see on the screen the activities that we really focus on: housing, community development, emergency disaster relief, and economic development. With the housing, once again, the owner-occupied rehab, the purchase, rehab, resale, and in the SEND, contracting and lead testing. And with that, we actually partner with Ryan at BVCA of Blue Valley and Cinca down in the extreme southeast corner of the state on lead testing on some of their houses. SEND contracting was something that we started last year as a way to support housing in rural communities. A lot of times it's really difficult to find contractors and subcontractors that will do the work in small towns, simply because there's more work to be done in Lincoln and the larger communities. This was a way to support that housing. We're still learning from that, and we hope it continues. So on the community development side, we do grant writing, project management, and community surveys. For the economic, or for the emergency disaster relief, we do flood buyouts, outdoor warning sirens, COVID-19 recovery. We've been really involved in that lately, particularly with the economic development side as small businesses continue to struggle. We are finding ways to support them through grants, through one-time payments, things along those lines to help keep their doors open. We've actually used a lot of the programs from across the state of Nebraska and the Midwest on finding ways to do this at a reasonable cost, and still we see some of the return on that investment. And then economic development. With that, we do a lot of small business financing. We partner with economic developers and lenders to do that. SYNDIC, that is a nonprofit development organization that was established a couple years ago. Small business financing and housing and workforce issues as well. So with that, we received $1.6 million of a rural workforce housing fund a couple years ago. So that program is moving forward. And the reason I incorporate workforce is we do a lot of daycares. There's a demand for daycares in rural Nebraska, and lenders just aren't willing to loan on those. So we don't fund the entire project, but what we do is we provide gap financing to allow the lender to be in first position. We come in and provide 30 to 40% of it. And so the bank's in first position. They have a good footing from a collateral perspective, but we're also able to provide daycare in some of these small towns that desperately need it. So I'm going to turn this over to Ashley. Ashley pretty much built this project with John and Jason from the Nebraska Children's Family Foundation. So Ashley.
All right, thanks, Tom. So essentially how this program basically got off the ground, to begin with, NIFA and the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation approached NROC, which is comprised of Nebraska's 8 development districts, about the opportunity for CARES grant funding through the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. And so after some discussion on a pretty quick deadline, it was determined that CENAC would be the grantee, and we would apply for up to $800,000 for direct statewide landlord assistance, which would be implemented by NROC or those 8 development districts across the state. And so we submitted the application on a pretty quick turnaround. I think it was about 2 days we had ended up putting it together. But luckily it was awarded. And so we actually started rolling out this program earlier this month. And so what happened is that $800,000 was divided equally amongst the 8 development districts. So now each district has $100,000 to distribute to qualified landlords throughout their regions. And so this is eligible for 92 of Nebraska's 93 counties. Please note that Douglas County isn't eligible for this program because they already had their own allocation of CARES assistance. And so as we were putting this together, the main idea was that we realized that with all of the financial uncertainty that COVID-19 has brought on everybody, not just the economy, but everybody, individuals as well, we realized that landlords who are renting to low to moderate income tenants, they may feel pressure based on their own losses to increase the rents on those affordable units, or even evict tenants who are no longer able to make full payments. And so the driving idea behind the program was really to help us avoid those situations. We don't want those landlords to remove their affordable units from the affordable rental market. And so to combat that, we decided that in creating this program, we wanted to make sure that landlords would be able to maintain those units, whether it's through rehab or with a financial payment, to make sure that those low to moderate income tenants wouldn't have to get evicted. So they are at the forefront of our minds as we're developing and implementing this program, as well as the landlords themselves. And actually this morning, there was an NPR interview with Michelle Singletary, who's a personal finance columnist for the Washington Post. And she was just reminding people that they were talking about evictions, but a lot of folks tend to have a negative perception of landlords. And we know this as well as Michelle, that most landlords, or many of them, are really just normal people who rely on their rental payments to cover their mortgages for their units. So we want to help both low to moderate income tenants and the landlords through this program. So what we've done is qualified landlords are eligible for up to $10,000 of assistance through this program. And so we have some checks in place, and we'll get into that in a little bit, to make sure that money is going to landlords who are being responsible, who are taking care of their tenants and not letting them live into a substandard unit. So we'll describe that in a little bit, but basically that $10,000 can go towards minor rehabilitation or upgrading of deferred maintenance items, or just for a direct financial assistance payment. And I'll break that down for you here in a few minutes. And so quickly, before we go into that, here's just a slide showing you how these funds are going to flow through the program. The grant was awarded by the Nebraska DHHS to CENAC. And so as CENAC is managing this program, they are relying on the development districts to implement it statewide. So CENAC will issue payments to the development districts, who will then ultimately be the final pass-throughs. They will issue payments to the landlords and contractors, depending on what kind of assistance they're applying for. And so doing this for all landlords, we're requiring them to work closely with their local development district. They're going to have to submit all documentation, all pay requests, everything that they're going to need prior to being issued those payments. And we try to incorporate this program with a lot of flexibility for each development district. So as we were designing it, we have the ground rules, the basic set of how this thing needs to be rolled out, but we wanted each development district to feel like they had a sense of ownership in it. And so feedback that we've already gotten from a lot of the other ones is they're doing different things, but essentially we're all going to achieve the same goal. And we do have a really tight timeline. These funds do have to be allocated by December 30th. So we have to spend $800,000 statewide by the end of the year. So we're trying to do this as efficiently and inclusively as possible. Okay, and so back to the breakdown of what landlords can apply for. So like I said, landlords are eligible for up to $10,000. And now please note that this is awarded on a per landlord basis and not per unit. So one landlord can apply for assistance to cover one rental unit. And for the purposes of this program, a unit is simply being defined as one that's being tied to a street address. So for example, if a landlord has a fourplex, only one of those 4 units is going to be eligible for assistance. It's based on the address. But what they can ask for is, number one, they can just go for up to $2,500 in direct financial assistance. And this is intended to help them offset missed rent or utility payments. They can also go for up to $10,000 for minor rehab of approved projects, and we'll kind of detail that here in a little bit. But basically, we wanted to keep it to minor rehab just because we do have to face that quick deadline of December 30th. We want projects that can be efficiently completed. And then they could also do a combination of up to $2,500 in direct assistance, and they could ask for an additional total for rehab, but it cannot exceed $10,000. So hypothetically, someone could ask for $1,000 in direct assistance and $9,000 in rehab, and then they would max that out. So,
and this is where that discretion comes in at the development districts level, because we understand that in some of these smaller communities that a landlord may have a duplex, and we also understand that that landlord that we've defined the unit as a street address. So you can't really roof half of a building. So in this instance, the landlord may apply for a street address for 123A Main Street, but still 123B Main Street may benefit. So once again, that's where the discretion comes in at the development district level. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of these dollars, but at the same time, we want to make sure that it's reasonable and that the money benefits as many people as we can.
perfect. And so moving on to the application process, we tried to streamline this and make it as simple and efficient as possible. DHHS does require several verification documents, which we'll get into, but basically the application is the first step in the process. They have to fill that out, and then it also requires those additional documents. So we're going to require a W-9 form from the landlord, proof of revenue loss, photos of any needed repairs if they're going for the rehab money. We need proof of Nebraska residency and U.S. citizenship or legal residence, And we also need an impact statement on them telling us how COVID-19 has financially impacted them. So that's from the landlord, but they're also required to give us a little bit of basic information on their tenants. So like we mentioned earlier, we're really trying to target landlords who rent to tenants who are in that low to moderate income range. So with that, we're going to ask for some basic info, name on the lease, and then there is a section on there showing income limits. And per guidance from DHHS, they've asked us to just go ahead and use this state median income. So if tenants are at or below 100% of the state median income based on family size, that's how they're going to income qualify for the program. So we don't require the tenants to provide that information. The landlord is going to have to get it and verify it on that application. And so all that's on there. They will also have to submit a landlord expectations form, which is essentially an adapted version of the memorandum of understanding. And so it's just a brief bullet point list. Here's what you have to do, and here's what needs to happen from your end as you participate through the program. So once we get those documents back from the landlord, everything checks out, then we'll sign an MOU. The district will sign an MOU with the landlord, and we'll proceed through the program. So aside from just those application documents, landlords are also required to document all project costs. So if they want to apply for that direct assistance, they're going to have to submit, yes, that's what they want, the invoices, any invoices from contractors. So landlords are going to be responsible for tracking down contractors to submit bids for any projects that they want to get done. Photos of those items, as well as if any project, any rehab project exceeds $5,000, we're requiring that the landlord obtain 3 bids from 3 separate contractors, and then that project will eventually be awarded to the lowest responsible bid. And so when we're talking about minor rehab, again, we want stuff that can be finished ideally within 2 to 3 days. And again, we're leaving a lot of discretion up to the districts on how they want to proceed and how they want to award projects. But what we're mostly anticipating for this is stuff like replacing a roof or a new HVAC system, and also like minor plumbing and electrical items, as well as installing smoke and carbon monoxide radon systems, stuff like that. Main thing is we're not going after cosmetics. So if somebody wants new carpet just for the sake of having new carpet, that doesn't count. It has to be something that will increase the livability and quality of life in the unit for the tenants. And so I touched briefly on some of the requirements, the verification requirements from DHHS. This is a slide that we kind of stole from them when they were telling us about this program to begin with. So you'll see there are 3 main categories: proof of Nebraska residency, proof of US citizenship, and COVID-19 impact. And you guys can read those. I'm not going to read every bullet point, but I will direct your attention to a few things. Number 1, in the Nebraska residency box, go ahead and look at that first bullet point. For acceptable documents, we need a state issued driver's license or an ID card. And you'll see in parentheses that this also satisfies category 2 as well. So that would cover your US citizenship as well. And then if you move on to box number 2 with the birth certificates at the top of that one, we got guidance from DHHS that this has to be a state issued birth certificate, not hospital issued. So as you're moving forward with this, as you're spreading the information, it has to be a state issued birth certificate from the landlord. These are all documents required from the landlord, again, not the tenants. And then finally, in the COVID-19 impact box, the very last bullet point, that signed letter of explanation, we feel like this is going to probably be the most efficient way to get that documentation. And DHHS has actually sent us a draft letter, which landlords would fill out documenting their exact needs. So it's a lot of fill in the blank. Explain to us what happened to you, explain how you were impacted financially by the pandemic, sign off on it, and that will fulfill that requirement. It's a lot easier than tracking down pay stubs, Social Security, all the stuff that's listed ahead of that in that box.
And one of the things that we've gotten calls on are outstate landlords that own property here in the state of Nebraska. However, they may live in Texas or Wyoming or some other place. They are not eligible because they do not live in Nebraska. So these dollars are meant for Nebraska residents to benefit Nebraska residents.
Perfect. So more landlord responsibilities here. They have to agree to maintain these units at an affordable rate throughout the duration of assistance. And they also have to ensure that the unit in question meets the habitability standards checklist. So earlier we were talking about making sure that we're not providing money to essentially slumlords. This is where that comes into play. So a habitability standards inspection will be completed for every single unit that goes through this program, regardless of what type of assistance they're asking for. And then otherwise, landlords are going to have to agree in that MOU not to evict their tenants throughout the duration of assistance unless sufficient grounds can be provided. And so if some situation comes up where they feel like they really need to evict, they have to communicate directly with their development district and make sure everything is out on the table prior to moving forward with that. Landlords are also agreeing to help guide their tenants to community resources for renters education and like programs. And they also will have their properties added to a statewide database of affordable rental units at housing.ne.gov. Okay, and so then with deadlines, we mentioned earlier, this stuff does have to be allocated. The money does have to be allocated by December 30th of this year. So it is a very quick, very urgent deadline. We need to get these funds spent. So to make sure that happens, we put in a couple other checks. By November 15th, if each district hasn't spent, or if any district hasn't spent their total $100,000 allocation, all the remaining funds are going to be placed into a statewide pool where any district can go ahead and access those for eligible landlords. And then by December 1st, if the money still isn't spent, landlords who have previously benefited from the program are allowed to then apply for additional assistance. So in order to get the rest of those funds spent, we're allowing landlords to apply for up to 2 more units. So for a maximum of 3 total units after December 1st. And then our partners throughout this program, like we mentioned, NIFA and the NCFF were instrumental in helping us get this kicked off. Moving forward, NIFA is just going to help us with marketing for the most part, like today, what we're doing. And then NCFF will be instrumental in building that inventory of landlord properties. And NROC, or the 8 development districts, are going to implement that. And so moving on to the next slide, we'll talk about those district responsibilities, or this is what NROC is going to be doing. So first and foremost, they have to market the program in their regions, and they also are responsible for seeking out landlords and appropriate projects within their boundaries as well. So once they get all of that figured out, they get a landlord, they get the application, everything's verified and good, then they have to go out and make a site visit. So they'll send a staff person out, and this is where we're going to do that habitability standards inspection. So they'll have to take photos of all the properties they go to that go through the program. Doesn't matter what type of assistance they're asking for, whether it's just that direct assistance or if it's rehab, they're going to have to take photos. Every single unit will go through a habitability standards inspection. And if everything's kosher, if it all meets the standards, we can proceed through the program. And so before and after photos are going to have to be taken for all rehab projects, and that again is on the development district, so that's their responsibility. Prior to them issuing any payments to the contractors for work completed, the district will have to send a staff person back out to the unit to verify that the work was completed to satisfaction. So again, districts are responsible for issuing the final payments to either the landlord or the contractors. And now we just come to how you guys can help. So please tell people, spread the word. If you're interested in helping us market this, coordinate with your local development districts. We're going to show you the last slide in the presentation has a list of all of them and their contact info. Otherwise, reach out to landlords you know who might qualify for this, other housing agencies, and we want to say that public housing authorities are a really good resource for landlord information. But please remember that housing authorities are not actual eligible recipients for this program. They have their own CARES money set aside, but they do have lists of landlords that participate in their programs. And that's a great place, a great resource to reach out to if you want to help us get this moving along. And so other than that, we have a press release. You can contact us here at the Send office. It's just a sample. It talks about the entire statewide program. It's not specific to any district. You can take that, publish it, help generate some interest. And so with that, if you want more information, an application, the map down there on the corner of your screen shows how the 8 development districts are divvied up. They're listed there on the bullet points with their phone numbers. And you can also access this information online at the link provided nrockne.com/members. So that is the last slide.
That's it.
Thank you.
Very good, excellent presentations from everyone. Again, these the PowerPoint slides will be uploaded hopefully by the end of the day today. We'll put them on our NIFA website, nifa.org/com-dev, so community development. If you get to our website, there'll be a banner that mentions the webinar series, so you can find those easily, and we can get that information to you. So I'm going to do something a little unscripted right now because, as most of you know, there has been some recent news regarding evictions and the CDC eviction moratorium. We have a special guest that's on the phone, and I'm going to see if I can unmute him. And let me see here. Well, Scott, we might not be able to do this after all because I can't unmute you. Wait, there we go.
I just did that.
Oh, okay, very good. So Scott Mertz is with Legal Aid of Nebraska, and I just wanted to give him the opportunity to give a few minutes to just talk about this eviction moratorium and his expertise in this area. So Scott, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Again, apologies if I'm recapping things people have already been briefed in or well versed in, but we thought it beneficial during this discussion of eviction prevention, the current legal standing of everyone at risk of eviction. So yes, the CDC moratorium that was announced back on September 1st and took full legal effect on September 4th. The CDC moratorium obviously comes through the Center for Disease Control, and this is on the heels of the CARES Act moratorium, and perhaps there might be some confusion with the expiration of that law with this administrative action. So just some background. The CARES Act passed back in March did also have a temporary moratorium on residential evictions. Difference with that law is that affected properties. Again, an actual piece of law passed by Congress and signed into law by the executive had a 120-day moratorium that impacted specific federal properties. Those properties subsidized by federal dollars or in some way backed, the mortgages backed by federal dollars. For 120 days, those properties should not be subject to an eviction. So with that lapsing at the end of July, there was a genuine concern of a incoming wave of evictions that had been halted for all that time, and without perhaps the necessary financial relief getting to everyone across the country. So action was needed, action was not coming, and then there was an executive order signed directing certain agencies to find ways to help those at risk for eviction. And lo and behold, the Center for Disease Control comes out with their act, which comes under their authority under public health law to prevent the spread of communicable disease. So this is not a piece of financial legislation or in any way looking at the economic risk for everybody at risk of eviction, but is seeking to limit the spread of COVID during our pandemic. And with that, they wanted to put a temporary halt on evictions through December 31, 2020. So who does this impact? Again, the difference with the CARES Act moratorium, this is not based on where people are living. Anybody in a residential tenancy where they are renting their housing is eligible for this, but you have to be a covered person under the law to get the benefit. So what is a covered person? How can people actually utilize this moratorium? The short answer is they have to sign the form. Again, it requires a proactive step from everybody at risk of eviction for reason of non-payment of rent. But in order to utilize this moratorium, they do have to take that affirmative step of signing the declaration and providing it to their landlord. They can do this at any point up until the moment of eviction. And the ideal would be people are doing this well before it gets to that point. And so we're doing our part at Legal Aid of Nebraska, and we would hope all agencies on the call are directing people at risk of eviction to Legal Aid of Nebraska for all legal questions and explanation of their legal rights. But for a short explanation, what this declaration means, what this form means, that they would be signing in an effort to utilize the moratorium and be protected from an eviction through the end of the calendar year. Primarily, it says they have used best efforts to obtain all government assistance for rent or housing. So again, the full topic of today's call, as long as they're aware of and using some best efforts to get that assistance. It's pretty broad, but they are affirming they're trying to get rental help, and that they do not have income in excess of $99,000 for a single filer or $198,000 for a joint return, or otherwise we're not required to file income taxes in 2019. So again, that's a big pot of people, certainly for renters in the state of Nebraska. You're not going to have a lot of people who don't meet that qualification. Otherwise, you're just affirming you're unable to make your rent due to some substantial loss of income, compromise of your hours, or extraordinary out-of-pocket medical expense. So you are affirming that you have suffered some manner of economic hardship, but there's no requirement that this is actually COVID impacted specific. Again, contrast that with the governor's order way back in the spring for roughly 2 months, when the executive order by the governor said anyone who had income or hours or had to stay at home because of COVID, specifically, you could document that your eviction hearing should not take place until after May 31. This is not as specific. It's a far broader declaration that you're required to sign. Otherwise, you just have to affirm you're going to use best efforts to make payments and do what you can, and you understand that rent is not being forgiven in this moratorium. And furthermore, late fees are also not being included under the moratorium. People will accrue fees the longer they are behind and not paying, notwithstanding they're being protected under the moratorium. So the key thing is the government wants to make sure people are aware that they still have obligations, and that they are affirming under penalty of perjury that they just cannot afford right now and otherwise need to be in their current housing, otherwise being at risk of being in a shelter or in close quarters with other people. Again, throughout the call, identified as a major risk at this time, and the Center for Disease Control is in full agreement and wishes to keep people from commingling and in close quarters with people outside their normal housing situation. So long and short of it is this was passed recently and is much broader than even the CARES Act moratorium, but people do have to take that affirmative step of getting this declaration, signing the declaration, and getting it to their landlord. And at any time, again, up through a court hearing, anything before the eviction going through, this does have full force and effect.
Okay, excellent. Thank you so much for making the time today to help us get great information out there. Obviously, there's a theme. Documentation is essential for all of these programs. Can I get the panelists to join me so everyone can see you? And Scott, Legal Aid of Nebraska, what is your website?
Oh, legalaidofnebraska.org. I mean, you just put it into Google or otherwise type Legal Aid of Nebraska, all one word, .org.
Okay, very good. Okay, excellent. Thank you again. And feel free to stay on. So we have a few questions here that came in. I'm going to start with this one because it was specifically one of the PowerPoint slides that Tom, that you had mentioned. Someone asked, can you please explain what flood buyouts are and the funding source?
Yeah, flood buyouts are a program through FEMA. They partner with NEMA, or Nebraska Emergency Management Agency, on that. Flood buyouts will cover about 80% of the purchase of a home and the removal of a home. Ashley's actually been working on that project as well.
Yeah.
So, Ashley?
Yeah, basically, if a city's going for this, one of the major requirements is once you remove the structure, the city has to maintain that lot as green space in perpetuity, so you cannot build on it. But yeah, we're currently working with the city of Fairbury and the city of Peru on 2 acquisition projects that are actually quite extensive. So yeah, if you need more information, you can reach out to us. You can reach out to NEMA. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Looks like we have a question here, and I think maybe this came in, Denise, when you were talking. You mentioned a requirement of proof of citizenship. Are legal permanent residents And then it says in parentheses, green card holders exempt from assistance.
Let me look. Yes, this is for specifically for the restoration and recovery funds. That's where the citizenship needs to be proven. So there are other grant, like if someone can't prove their citizenship, what we do is we take it and we flip them to another one. So we can't accept the items that we can't accept is birth certificate showing birth in the United States, Form N5550, certificate of naturalization, Form N560, certificate of citizenship, Form FS240, and report of birth abroad of United States citizen. Valid. Those are the other forms that we could accept.
Okay, thank you. Is there a cap on assistance across funds? And are the funds taxable as income? Do anybody know that?
Some programs have caps, some don't. Like, so that's one piece of it. Taxable income? I wish I knew that answer. I don't. Ryan, do you know that answer? That's a good question.
I would assume that it would be, for the landlord, it would be taxable income as just as if the tenant were paying them rent. If we're assisting with rent, then yeah, I believe that it would be.
Yeah, we plan on issuing 1099s at the end of the year to all landlords who accepted the support.
Yes, and I'm glad you said that. We do that as well, and we require a W-9 from each landlord. So yes, that would be taxable.
Sorry, we do the same, the W-9. I was thinking for the client, like, is it a gift? Like, sorry. So I was going that direction. But yes, for the landlord.
Okay, well, and then I had a couple of questions. One is rapid rehousing documentation. I know you guys mentioned that people would need some kind of an eviction notice, but if somebody is already homeless, I guess this is a two-part. One, if they're already homeless, what kind of documentation do you need to verify homelessness? And then, well, I guess let's just start with that. The other question I was going to ask is, like, does this help people that are doubled up? Can a someone staying with someone write something saying, hey, they can't stay with me anymore?
Yes. So as far as somebody being literally homeless, if they are in a shelter or somewhere that, if they're in a shelter, or perhaps say Salvation Army is paying for their motel room, it would just either be a quick email or letter or note, something from Salvation Army or from the shelter. It does not have to be a formal document necessarily, but just something to verify that they're homeless. If not, it's really just self-verification, and it's up to the case manager. Like if they say that they're living in a tent at the park, the case manager could theoretically go check that out. But a lot of it is self-verification. And so that's pretty easy to do. And as far as doubling up, yes, that's a big part of it. Even just same thing as for rapid rehousing, even just a little note from whomever they're staying with saying they can't stay here anymore, they need to be out by Tuesday, is more than sufficient. Sometimes people don't want to do that, and if they don't want to do that, it's okay. That is always the preferred avenue, but we can always accept self-verification as well.
And I'm going to jump in there because for rapid rehousing, there's a requirement that they follow that equal access. They have to be prioritized. Gone are the days of first come, first serve. Welcome the days of what's your vulnerability. Those that are higher vulnerability are going to get opportunities first, so they have to be a part of coordinated entry to be eligible for rapid. Prevention with the doubled up, that's coming on board, but so it will be required, but not yet. So.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you shared, and the PowerPoints that were presented today have so much information on them. I'm sure people were scrambling to take notes. So the good news is this is being recorded, but I was thinking about the public doors, the list of all the different agencies throughout Nebraska. I was thinking about all the NROC agencies. That was a lot of information to put on a screen. So I think these PowerPoints are going to be really helpful for people that watched. Tom and Ashley, one of the things maybe to ease some of the landlords that are out there listening, a habitability standard inspection might sound more intimidating than it actually is. Can you just kind of touch on what that is?
Yeah, it's a very basic inspection. I mean, do you have running water? Do you have a sink? Do you have a toilet? Stuff like that. It's not like HQS. It's not super all-encompassing. It's just a simple checklist to make sure that they're living in the correct livable conditions. Excuse me.
Okay, great. I thought that might help.
Yeah.
Do any of you as panelists have any questions for Scott? He's still on the line. I know he covered a lot. Unfortunately, we don't have a PowerPoint. Scott, some of the stuff you touched on, a good place to look for documentation to kind of people could look at. Would that be legal aid? Do you have some pages that someone could dig into that CDC information?
Yes, absolutely. Right at the home page, we have links that direct anybody looking for specific information on the CDC moratorium, which in turn you can print off the declaration form in English and Spanish. I think we're trying to get it so you can e-sign it too on the website for the sake of just doing electronic transfer of it. I don't know the status of that, but there's a lot of info with an FAQ that we also have on the CDC moratorium.
Okay, very good. In NIFA, we have a COVID relief page, and we're probably going to be updating that soon. As you know, we're also trying to help market the landlord assistance program. Really, it's just about, we want to help share what you guys are preaching out there and make sure people know where to contact. There's a lot of, it is confusing to hear about all this money that's coming in, and so it's like, but how do I get help? So it's great to know about the public doors and about these resources, and at least somebody calls somebody up and they hopefully don't have to call 100 people. They call one person and get directed to the right area. So Nebraska was at a good place for this, luckily, because we already work really well together and have coordinated entry, and we have these systems that are already built. So we should all be very thankful of that and thankful for the work that all of you are doing. We're at the end. Is there anything else you guys want to say? All right. Well, NIFA really appreciates you doing this. Again, this is our first special edition for property managers. Next week, we have Western Economic Services to help people understand how to use the Profile of Nebraska dashboard at nestats.org, and that should be very helpful. We have information on fair housing coming up. Like I said, domestic violence, human trafficking, so many webinars. Our conference was postponed, and so we're bringing webinars to people, and we're just going to keep rolling with it. Anybody who's on the call now, when this is over, you'll get a survey. Please let us know if there's other topics you want us to cover, because we are looking for more information to get out there to people. So thank you, Denise, Ryan, Ashley, and Tom. Again, we really appreciate it, and everybody have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. And Scott, thank you.
No problem.